from all the time zones. I quote the renowned physicist Richard Feynman: I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. My name is Bhavna, and I hope everyone here is eager to seek and learn from today's lecture. Before we hear from today's distinguished speaker, I request my colleague Aradhna to speak a few words about Professor J. Ramachandran. Over to you, Aradhna.
Yeah, thank you, Bhavna. And hello, everyone. I'm humbled and feel grateful today to have an opportunity to talk about Professor J. Ramachandran. We used to fondly call him Dr. Ram. Dr. Ram chose to pursue his passion for bringing out the difference in lives of millions of people across the globe, fighting the race against antimicrobial resistance. And that's how Gangajan was born, pioneering bacteriophage research in India. More importantly, he did this at the age when most of the people think of retiring from the professional career. The biggest learning: age is not the bar to limit your passion. You can achieve anything you want with your strong determination and will. His dedication to innovation and commitment to the team has created an incredible opportunity for growth and a huge impact on so many young scientists. Dr. Ram was a wonderful teacher, boss, and a leader. We all are immensely thankful to him for all that he has done and feel proud to be a part of the legacy he has built at Gangajan. We will be forever grateful for his generosity and kindness. It was always an enchanting experience to hear from a visionary like him about the new stages of opportunity the AMR and bacteriophage research will offer to the young scientists. His tenacity of purpose, outstanding leadership, and innovative spirit are some of the qualities we all admire the most. As an entrepreneur, his achievements have been remarkable. His entrepreneurial skill has won him many admirers. Perseverance, integrity, and people-loving nature are just a few of his qualities that will continue to inspire us. We are lucky to have worked with someone who inspired us every day. We are truly grateful to be a part of this company he has built, and I'm sure that we'll be able to return the favor sometime in the near future, and he will be looking at us up from there. I will stop here. Back to you, Bhavna.
Thank you, Aradhna. In honor of Professor J. Ramachandran on his birthday, our previous noteworthy speakers were Professor Charles Cooney from MIT, Dr. Balamanian, biomedical engineer and entrepreneur, Professor G. Padmanabhan, former director of Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Today, we have amongst us Dr. Uday B. Desai, a renowned Indian academician and founding director of IIT Hyderabad. His research in the field of cyber physical systems and artificial intelligence are invaluable. I now request my colleague Sandhya to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Uday B. Desai.
Thanks, Bhavna. Hello, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Uday B. Desai. Dr. Desai is a founding director of IIT Hyderabad, a distinguished academic leader, visionary, educator, and a pioneer in research and innovation. Dr. Desai played a pivotal role in establishing the institute, guiding it to become one of India's top 10 engineering institutions within just a decade. He was the first to start innovative multidisciplinary departments such as engineering science, artificial intelligence, and climate change. Dr. Desai's academic journey epitomizes excellence and commitment. He holds a bachelor's degree from IIT Kanpur, a master's degree from the State University of New York, and a doctorate from Johns Hopkins University, all in electrical engineering. His research interests are in wireless communication, signal processing, cyber physical system, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence. Dr. Desai has made significant contribution in the field with a scholarly work, including being an editor to a book on stochastic process and author to 8 monographs. Would like to mention a few: a Bayesian approach to image interpretation, multifactorial based network modeling, multi-hop mobile wireless network, and Tukoi, thermally unstable, partially oriented yarns, silicon of the future, and so on. Throughout his career, Dr. Desai has held prestigious positions, including faculty roles at Washington State University and IIT Bombay, as well as visiting professorship at leading institutions in US and Europe. His exceptional contribution have earned him numerous accolades, such as the Outstanding Alumni Award from the University of Buffalo, US, Distinguished Alumni Award from IIT Kanpur, Fellow of Indian National Science Academy, and Excellence in Teaching Award from IIT Bombay for 2007. He is also the recipient of the prestigious J.C. Bose Fellowship that is awarded to active scientists in recognition for their outstanding performance. So at present, he is in the board of Talent Sprint and IKP Knowledge Park and serves as a chancellor of Anurag University, Hyderabad and ICFI University, Dehradun. We are indeed privileged to have you, sir, with us today. Please join me in welcoming him once again as he delivers the 4th Professor J. Ramachandran Memorial Lecture on how deep tech is reshaping our world. So before I hand over the session to Dr. Desai, please note that all the questions will be taken at the end in the QA session, and I request you all to post the questions in the chat box. Over to you, sir.
You would like to start my lecture, so shall I share the screen first?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Okay, let me just do that. Okay. Okay, let me go to screen. Okay, I'll try to minimize this. I don't need this. Okay. First of all, I'm really honored that I was invited to give the lecture in memory of Dr. Ramachandran. I think it's a very special privilege for me. I must thank Dr. Balganesh for inviting me. Actually, I'm quite humbled. Whatever you read out about Dr. Ramachandran, I think he had an amazing career, and certainly great that I'm giving a lecture in his honor. Another thing also I would like to say, which came out in my introduction, which was rather long and quite generous. I would say that I'm an engineer, not a life science person. I think Dr. Ramachandran was a life sciences person out there. So my talk is very different in that sense. Okay. Also, this is like Friday evening, 7:30 p.m. I wish it was a talk in Bangalore in person, enjoying the ecosystem that has been set up by various cantonments in Bangalore. Okay. But nevertheless, let's start off. And I hope you like the lecture. I've tried to keep it light by and large. There may be some slightly tricky point, but I'll try to make sure that they are not hard. I do realize it's Friday, 7:30 p.m. Let me start off by generally, looking at deep tech. Okay. Essentially, all of us have been impacted, and today I don't need to elaborate too much on it in some sense because we are all living through deep tech. Many of us, those of us who were born in the 50s, 60s, technology was so dramatically different, and over the last, 75 years, there has been a phenomenal change. Sometimes the change, if you look back in time, it's quite difficult to comprehend that such a short time, such huge changes can take place. Some deep techs are good, some are not good. So I refer to it like the yin and yang, two sides of the same coin. You can't quite do away with it. And I'll briefly talk about, focusing more on the good and occasionally maybe the bad, not that much. Okay. And my focus will be on technology, as I mentioned in my preamble. Okay. I'm a not life sciences person, but I'll make one couple of brief remarks as I go along, and hopefully, it will generate some thinking. So what I would say is that indulge me, and this is more like a joyride. Okay, so it's not like a lecture in a conventional sense. I'm not here to, as a professor, you normally want to teach something, not at all. Many things you may be aware of it. Okay, so hopefully some things will be new to you. Maybe at least the perspective, I presume, would be new, if not the words. Okay. Now, what are the deep techs that are governing us today, and which will govern also future societies? I've listed here, I'm not going to repeat all of them, but things which are there and which have affected us, semiconductors, for example, data science, cyber-physical system. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along, cyber-physical systems out here. You have things coming up now called neuromorphic computing, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and a whole plethora of things. Often is even difficult to keep track of various vocabularies and the acronyms that are associated with deep tech. Okay, but yes, it is one form or the other. We are literally living in a cloud of deep tech, for good or for bad, and that's something which society will decide as we go along as to how things will turn out here. I've also mentioned here, and I'll have one slide toward the end on gene editing. Something I think is very, very critical, and I'll make some remarks on it. Another one is space technology. So I'll have some slide on that also. India is beginning to make some move out there, though ISRO, we are very proud, but from a telecommunication perspective, the outside world is far ahead in space technology. Okay. Now, broadly, let's just look at different just few things out here. What are going to be changing us? Healthcare has been completely revolutionized. Has not reached the underserved. That's the bad part. People who are by and large well off today have access to fantastic healthcare to the extent that all of us believe, that we will be very active till 80. Okay. While I was growing up, if someone lived beyond 60, it was considered to be grand old age. Today 80 is the limit, and people are still active beyond 80. I mean, you look at someone like Clint Eastwood, he's producing movies at 90s. AI and automation. Now, this is a big thing, big topic. Lots of articles are written. There are enough YouTube lectures and podcasts and whatnot. It has some positive impact. All of us are experiencing it. It will also have some negative impact. We cannot quite avoid that. We'll try. One has to try to make sure it minimizes. That's about it. But some negative impact of AI is bound to be there. Automation is coming in much bigger way. Briefly, I'll allude to that in some autonomous navigation business. Industry 5.0. 4.0 is there. Okay, we talk about it. Now people are talking about it in 5.0. Negative impact on employment. I mean, how are people going to be gainfully engaged if there is so much artificial intelligence and so much industrial automation? It's something that all of us collectively, whether you are in life sciences, whether you are in engineering like me, or even if you are in social sciences, I think collectively we have to evolve some kind of a system where all of us will be gainfully engaged. Biotechnology, I don't have to say much, you know a lot more about it, and the impact of CRISPR can be plus or minus. Communication and computing, this is like a bread and butter for me. I worked on it a lot of things, and something which I'm seeing now, actually not just reading about it, I've seen in my young students, this attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Okay, many of us are having it. Even people like me sometimes are unable to maintain a sustained attention for more than a certain amount of time, something which was like natural for us when we were growing up. Space exploration is very big. I think we are just scratching the surface in spite of a lot of hype that is there. It's just too immense. As they say, space, the final frontier. In fact, one other thing I'd like to talk about, I'm not included here, I'll briefly mention in this, along with space, underwater exploration. I mean, what is happening below the sea, it's absolutely mind-boggling. And I think very little research is going on there in my perspective, simply because space is far more exciting. Smart transportation and mobility, all of us are getting affected. Okay, privacy and security, another big issue that we deal with day in, day out. And what is happening is life is too fast-paced. How are we going to adapt? In the early days, there was time to adapt to the technology before a new technology came in. Today, deep tech is moving too fast. Something which looks exciting today, we just about to learn this technology. A year down the road, sometimes less than that, it looks like an obsolete technology. Okay, if not obsolete, at least old. Now, how do we deal with that? I'm putting a lot of questions. I don't have answers to all the questions. Each question is a matter of debate, discussion, perhaps a monograph. Now, broadly, what I would say, deep tech to me begins with an idea. Okay? I mean, that is true of research, all the things. And many times I have found, and I'll give several examples as I go along, it is answering a simple question which leads to very high tech. The questions are very simple. What comes out of it and the process by which the technology is developed is quite complex. And we have come a long way from the steam engine all the way to the spacecraft. I mean, there are enough people who will understand how a steam engine works today. But on the other hand, there are a handful of people in the whole world who understand how a spacecraft works. Okay, so things have become quite complex. Okay, some examples. Okay, and this is just to show you start somewhere, you go somewhere, you have a simple question, and where does it lead to? We are all familiar with CT scans. I think many of you in life sciences here know more about it than I do. But if I look at the history, and this is something I was preparing some other talks in the early day, a few years or so ago, and I was doing some kind of a survey, and I found this, that the British engineer who Godfrey Hounsfield, when he started it, what was he looking at? He wanted to develop technology to read what is happening inside the pyramid. You can't break it, you can't cut it open. Okay, how do you go and capture it? And he thought cosmic rays will give him some information. Maybe he will pass cosmic rays through pyramids. On the other side, he'll capture them, some reflected, etc., and he'll be able to tell what is inside it. He started with that. The other big thing was he held on to this idea for a long time, almost about 15 years, almost about 11 years. And eventually, it was that idea which was not quite used to study the pyramids, but it helped us develop computer tomography, which is today, in some sense, a bread and butter equipment in any hospital that you go across. And similar stories are there about other scanners also. So you start somewhere in a technology, you have a question which is very simple. I want to know what's inside the pyramid without cutting it, without breaking it. How do I go about it? And what leads to is something very interesting, very complex, and all of us are benefiting, the whole society is benefiting from what we call CT scan. Of course, for me, this is a big history. Again, these people are answering some simple question, how machines can do computing. Very simple. That's where Babbage started way back. Okay, then of course, the most famous person that we all know about, and they made a movie also on him, Alan Turing, the Enigma machine. Okay, and those were massive computers. If you go back, in fact, one can do some, you can do some googling and look at the first computer, big one called ENIAC. It was there at the University of Pennsylvania, using valves. And on the right hand side, you can see the picture out here. I hope you can see my arrow in here. Okay. And you can see, this whole room is nothing but one computer. Today, that whole of it is, less powerful than what you probably have in an ordinary cell phone, not even a very high-end Apple phone. Okay. So things have moved quite rapidly. And what has revolutionized is something called the transistor. I'll just come to that in a minute. The other thing is the internet. Today, I'm able to talk to you because of internet. In fact, large number of deep tech technologies which are making huge impact are because of internet. And how did internet start? Way back, DARPA gave a project. How can two computers talk to each other? If you go back to 60s and 70s, where, people use computers, it was like a dumb terminal. I did my programming, that's about it. In fact, I learned programming on those punch cards, not even on PT100 terminals. So it was quite some time ago. But now, how can two computers talk to each other? And that is where this so-called ARPANET came in, and the ARPANET eventually became internet. Okay, and this was a defense project, by the way. We have all our perspectives on defense and other things. It is something which was financed by defense. Defense wanted defense computers in one location to talk to another defense computer in another location, located maybe thousands of miles apart. Okay, how do you do that? And today, the whole world is connected just because of this answering one simple question out here. The second thing which has impacted, and in fact, the current presentation is an example as to how I'm able to do video conferencing, is by Tim Berners-Lee, what we call Netscape and what we call browsers. You use Chrome, or you may use some other browser, that doesn't really matter out here. And again, what he was doing, Tim Berners-Lee was at CERN in Switzerland. And he was trying to answer again this simple question. Can there be a language by which people can talk to each other on the computer using a common interface? Okay. So it's a very simple question. Okay. So this was not, earlier the computers were talking to each other. Now I want to talk to you, right? And how can I develop an interface so that the way I talk to you and I talk to anybody else in the world, or hundreds of people get together, thousands, and talk to each other, we can do it. And that's what led to Netscape, and rest is history, as they would say. The other thing which is coming in now, and I think a few people in India may be aware of it, is what I call, space communication. Everybody has heard of Elon Musk. And the day is not very far when you will have a SATCOM or a satellite modem, okay, modulator, demodulator, built into your cell phone. Currently, your cell phone is basically what you would call a terrestrial phone. That is, when I turn the phone on, I connect to a base station, which may be a few hundred meters or sometimes even 50 meters, 20 meters from where I am. And the whole terrestrial area is covered with this base station. Now, what is happening is we are in principle creating such base stations in space using tiny satellites, which are referred to as CubeSats. You can see the dimension, 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter. It's a very tiny satellite which is there. And in fact, this is something we used to talk about it quite some time back. Now it is almost a reality. I used to talk about it like we have cellularized land Now the next thing is we are cellularizing space, and cellularization of space is going to happen using CubeSat. It already happened, by the way. It is not happening anymore. It is done. Of course, there will be a lot of evolutions. Okay, and now the question is how to integrate the two. So I should have a phone where I do roaming, either through satellite or I do roaming through terrestrial, depending on where I am. In fact, telephony on aircraft will become a cinch once this particular technology becomes much more prevalent and mobile. The disturbing fact, in some sense, I must say, is there are about something like 9,000, 10,000 satellites in space. These CubeSats, we're not talking of the big ones that normally ISRO will launch and what we see in big news. This is like quietly done. Half of those satellites are owned by one company called Starlink, which is Elon Musk's company. And that's why if you look at, if you read about it, Elon Musk is advocating very, very actively into getting into space communication. Even in Indian newspapers, you may be reading about spectrum kind of issues that are coming up as to how to allocate spectrum for such communication, etc. So I will not get into all those details, but what is going to happen is the way communication is existing today, suddenly everything is going to change. Okay, today you cannot buy a SATCOM, by the way, or what they call a SAT phone. It is highly restricted. People in very specific defense domain can get it. Okay, you and I cannot get a license for a SAT phone. We can buy a mobile phone, but that whole thing is going to change dramatically. I thought it will start changing it, taking a little longer. And Elon Musk is providing SAT connectivity. The only difference is that mobility is not there. Mobility is bound to come in due course of time. The other thing, which in the example I would say is that at the highest level, deep tech emanates from creating a new thought, like quantum theory, relativity theory, the four gravitational forces, theory of evolution, etc. And I've given two examples out here and they're happening quite actively. Quantum computing is like the talk of the town in some sense. AI is one thing, but quantum is something which everybody is talking about. India has a quantum mission with something like 6,000 crores, or 4,000 crores. Numbers keep varying depending on who I talk to. Okay, but significant money has been set aside, and already distribution of that funds are beginning to take place. What you see on the left-hand side is a quantum computer developed by IBM, and very recently, a few months ago, IBM actually set up a quantum computer at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Why I'm saying is that this is how things happen. You saw ENIAC was at UPenn. You need to equip academic institutions with something which is absolutely latest. So IBM has put that computer at RPI in the United States. It's about what you call about 120 qubits computer. You have normal bits and bytes in a digital computer. In quantum computers, they talk about quantum bits or qubits. Now it'll be difficult for me to explain in this short talk. I'll leave it at that. On the right-hand side, we have made a beginning. This is a picture of a quantum computer, about 5-qubit quantum computer, which is being developed and working at IISc Bangalore. I'm not involved in developing. My picture is there because on the left of me, or rather in the picture right of me, is Vibhor Singh. He is my former student from IIT Bombay, now an associate professor at IISc Bangalore. On the right, he's Chetan Singh Thakur, and on the right is Vibhor Singh in a t-shirt. Okay, so they are the ones, along with the chief investigator Apurva Patel, who have been working on it, along with people at Raman Research Institute in Bangalore to develop this particular computer. Of course, a new project is given to them by which they will be able to take the 5-qubit to maybe 50-qubit computer. I don't have all the details with me, but it's like really nice that something is actually happening, in some sense, right next to us. Now, I deliberately put this slide. It is from a presentation that I just to show, to overwhelm people. This is a very overwhelming slide when you look at it and you look at all the words which are there. We are all familiar with each of them. Put all together and you can see the kind of things that are going to happen in the world. This is, in my opinion, our emerging future. Human machine convergence, robots coming in, behaving like us. I don't think the robots are going to take over us. But anyway, that's doomsday prediction that some people have. All kinds of interesting things are happening out here. Drones, genomics, blockchain, nanotechnology. And this is how things are moving. Okay, and in some sense, it's a very exciting time if you are a researcher, a developer into technology. But if you're a user also, it's exciting. But unfortunately, this excitement is in a small percentage of the world's population, even any country you pick it. By and large, maybe, generously speaking, I would say about 20-25% of the world's population is benefiting. In India, perhaps much less than that. Maybe 10% of Indian population is really able to take advantage of this. Now, that's what you call the yin and yang dichotomy which exists out here. And how do we resolve that? How do we overcome that? That's a question we'll all have to answer collectively. So just a quick progression, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. The first industrial revolution, steam engine. Second one, electricity, computers. The fourth industrial revolution is messy. Okay, you have cyber-physical system, AI, sensors, quantum computing, blockchain, all of it put together. And many times when I discuss with my social science friends, and the question comes up, are we all headed to the Orwellian brave new world? I don't know. I hope not. I hope it will be a much more enjoyable and exciting world. Okay. So if you look at historically, earlier, everything was energy processing. Even today, you look at a human body, it's basically an energy processing system. You put in some energy into it by eating. You get some useful energy, like I'm moving my hands, I'm giving this lecture, I'm watching this thing, and then some energy which is being wasted. Okay, and that is how things move. Internal combustion engine is probably the classic example of this process, and everything was thought of it that way for almost 300 years. Then about 75 years ago, this whole concept got challenged in a way, okay, and we started thinking of systems as information processing system. And today's IT world is basically, this is the genesis of it, that you look at every system and that system is processing it. Even human body can be thought of as an information processing system. Okay, I won't get into the details of it. Perhaps some of the people in life sciences know a lot more about it than I know. I remember I had a colleague at TIFR in Bombay, and he had given a lecture, not just lecture, a lot of debates with him on signal processing in the human body. It was one Dr. Padhe. Okay, I have not been in touch with him for a long time, and I'm sure, like me, he is also retired. Okay. And of course, the latest development of this whole concept of looking at systems as information processing system is, of course, artificial intelligence. Okay. Now, what is the harbinger of the whole AI world, the IT world, the telecommunication world, whatever we have been talking about, the robots that have come in, etc., etc. This is my personal bias. All of you can disagree with me. I'll be happy with that. Okay. I'm an electrical engineer, so therefore I think with that particular bias, I can't quite get rid of it. Okay. Information theory and transistors. These two developments almost happened around the same time, roughly. They were not too far apart. And that is something which changed the whole world. This is the transistor. Three people who developed it got the Nobel Prize, Bardeen, Brattain, and Shockley. This was at Bell Labs way back in 47. And this has changed. What looks so ugly out here, if you look at the very first image, I'm just putting my cursor out there. Okay. It doesn't look all that fancy. Today, your typical chip which runs your cell phone, whichever chip you talk about, Snapdragon or Exynos or the MXXX from Apple, etc., it has couple of billion transistors on it. Nobody ever thought in 47 that this tiny little thing, and we'll be able to integrate several billion transistors on one substrate. And with 3 nanometer technology, which is the latest technology which has come out for chip fabrication, this is going to become even much more complex. The next thing, and this is something, is my homage to Claude Shannon, the father of information theory, who changed everything. Now, information, this is a big thing. All of a sudden, he was able to think very differently. We all are comfortable thinking in terms of certainty. 2 plus 2 equals 4. If I go here, this is what is going to happen, etc., etc. Okay. Suddenly, the role of uncertainty was brought into technology. I'm not saying he invented uncertainty, randomness, etc., that existed long before Claude Shannon. But he was able to bring the concept of uncertainty and create this whole information theory. And if you look at it, what did Claude Shannon do? If you read about it, he said, I wanted to answer one simple question. He says, if I look at, say, a test tube filled with gasoline, I can tell exactly the amount of energy in it by mathematical calculations. Now, if I look at a signal on the oscilloscope, how do I tell what is the information content in that signal mathematically? He says, I can look at 2 signals and say, this signal has more information than the other one, but that is very heuristic and intuitive. How do I mathematically quantify it? This is a simple question that he started with. It took about 2 years for him, and he came up with this whole theory of information, which is the the backbone of everything that you and I are using. Like my whole video conferencing, if you look at the theoretical background, it goes back to Claude Shannon. Of course, then we had internet with people like Kleinrock, etc., etc. Time permit, I can talk about it. But to me, this was quite, it's not a simple question, by the way. Sorry, question is simple, but the answer is very, very complex. How do I mathematically quantify how much information is there in a given electrical signal? Now, let's come to artificial intelligence. I'm jumping out here. This, I think many of you in the audience who are in life sciences should be able to relate to it. This is, again, started way back in the 50s. MIT was the one which was leading. I think Bell Labs also, they were talking about it. And the whole notion those days was a thinking machine. How do I develop a thinking machine? And for that, they had to develop a model of a neuron. Okay, and this is the simplistic model of a neuron, not that it is simple, because this is a model they got implemented on a computer. Keep in mind, digital computers were also coming at the same time. Moment the computers came, people started thinking, hey, how do I develop a thinking machine? So the question that is talked about in AI is almost 75 years old. Okay, and this is a very interesting model. You have inputs going in, one fixed input one, x1, x2, x3 multiplied by weights. You sum it up, go through a nonlinearity. The most common nonlinearity we use is a sigmoidal function. Let's not worry about it. That some kind of and there comes an output. It is very similar, my elementary understanding of a neuron, and please forgive me if I make some mistakes out here. You have several inputs going into a neuron. Once those inputs collectively cross a threshold, the neuron itself will again fire. Okay, and now you have millions of these neurons firing together. And that is essentially what it is. So this is a network that you form with whole bunch of what we call in a engineering parlance, perceptron. And this is referred to as a multi-layer perceptron. There are multiple layers out here. The connectivity is very linear. Now, the real neuron is not how it is. Neither the network here is not how the network is there in the brain. But this is the kind of network we could actually implement and do something with it. Let's keep that in mind. It's not a one-to-one correspondence. Yes, it is motivated by the network in the brain. You can talk about all these arrows which you see out here. These are the interconnects that you have in the brain among the neurons. And these are essentially the representations of the neuron, the one I showed on the previous slide. And magic occurs. Now, this was there, by the way, for some time, but we didn't have the computing power. We could do maybe 100 neurons, 200 neurons, and some baby examples can be given. Today, what OpenAI is able to do, and ChatGPT is what we are using, okay, it has billions of neurons, okay, and it has billions of interconnect because of the massive supercomputers that we have available to us, and with the AI computers that are coming in using what they call graphical processor unit, GPUs, for NVIDIA, AMD, and others. Okay, I think this is going to go through, give some amazing inputs out here. Okay, I'll give a small example. Everybody has used ChatGPT. Okay, when Ratan Tata died, okay, I just wrote to ChatGPT saying, can you give me a ghazal, on the death of Ratan Tata? Okay, event occurring in India. Ghazal is a word which I think no American or OpenAI guy would know about it. And actually, it outputted a very nice ghazal. I wish I had had it to show it in the screen in Devanagari script. Okay. Now, this is something which is, and this is just the beginning, the AI is happening. I think some amazing things are going to happen in time to come. Cyber physical system, most of us are familiar with interacting with computer, I'm talking, you are listening, but there is no feedback. Essentially what is happening in the world by and large is what we call an open loop system. Something happens, someone observes, and then someone does something, but there is no feedback coming in. So essentially cyber physical system is trying to close the loop. Okay, so what you have is you have a physical world, something is happening, we have sensors, goes to cyber world, all kinds of processing in the cyber world takes place. Some decision from the cyber world is now given, and there are actuators which will actuate and make things happen. It's a little scary because we may not have as much control over it. And, like you see in many of the movies, perhaps the oldest movie, I hope everybody has seen it, 2001 Space Odyssey, where a HAL computer takes over the whole spaceship. Okay. And this application is all over. Cyber physical systems are there in agriculture, in healthcare, in aerospace, in structural health monitoring, in drones, smart buildings, everywhere. Where any example you pick, you can find the cyber physical system out there. And I must say, government of India has also sanctioned about 3,600 crores and set up 23 hubs on cyber-physical systems across the country. What they call innovation hubs. Now, I'll just briefly go here and talk about it. This is something which is, there at IIT Hyderabad. Okay, this is part of one of the hubs set up by DST as part of the cyber physical system mission. What they call, National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical System. Little complicated, but basically it's a CPS thing. So TIHAN is a technology innovation hub on autonomous navigation at IIT Hyderabad. It came into existence after I had stepped down as a director. Okay, but the discussions had began when I was a director at that point in time, and it is being headed by Professor Rajlakshmi. So the work, whatever I'm showing, is work of Professor Rajlakshmi and not my work. For example, she has a big team of 150 people, a huge hangover and everything. So these are some examples of autonomous vehicle. Currently, they're driving at about 10 to 15 kilometers per hour, and I think soon they'll be going at much faster speed. In fact, there is an operational golf cart, okay, on IIT Hyderabad campus, which the students are using it, faculty, visitors, and it just goes round and round. It takes you from the gate to a few specific spots, totally autonomous, okay, and it goes around like maybe 20-25 kilometers per hour. I think I told Raji that see if you can make it go a little faster, otherwise people will get bored sitting in that autonomous vehicle. Okay, these are what you call it. These are kind of drones which are coming in. In fact, we can technically, there are defense organizations across the world which have drones that are size of a fly. Okay, it can, and now we can see the kind of security, privacy issues that are going to come into picture. So these are some drones which are looking at birds, and they developed out here, and still a lot of work is ongoing out here. So this is to show that these are the kinds of drones, but things will come in and they're going to impact. You won't even know if this fellow is roaming, or you could be sitting in Starbucks and this something tiny little thing could be roaming around. You may think it's a mosquito or a fly, but it's collecting information. And now what's going to happen? Again, we need to collectively see what to do with it. Okay, these are the heavy duty drones, maybe transporting medicines during COVID time. Some of it was used, not the one developed by Professor Rajlakshmi, but there is another company in Hyderabad called Marut Drones. They had developed some small drones, to transport medicine to rural areas where there was no proper access and difficulties were there because of COVID. Okay. The other part, this is something you know a lot more, and I say this with a lot of trepidation, is CRISPR, Cas9. Now, what excited me, of course, CRISPR itself was very exciting. I saw that whole episode on Netflix, Human Nature, very, very fascinating. But the news item just about a year ago, December 8 to 2023, when US Food and Drug Administration approved Cas9, okay, a groundbreaking CRISPR-based gene editing therapy from a company called Vertex Pharmaceuticals and CRISPR Therapeutics for sickle cell diseases. So this is a very big thing, that a technology which came not too far, very recently, has already been approved to treat sickle cell diseases. And my general feeling, and I'm not an expert in all these things, is the combination of gene editing and AI is going to be very, very potent. Okay, it will create all kinds of things, some very useful, some could be rather dangerous also. It's only how things will evolve. On the other hand, you don't want too many tight regulations because innovations will be thwarted. There won't be innovations happening out here. You need regulations which are soft so innovation can take place. The reason I mention also is that, you know more about, but when I talk to people in India who deal in life sciences, like example, CCMB in Hyderabad, not much is happening in CRISPR in India, some reason. Things are doing, like CCMB told me that, yes, we are doing some research, but it says, yeah, at a small level, we are not going in a big way. I really don't know why. When this is actually becoming an acceptable treatment methodology, why are we going slow on it? Something that you would know better. So I've thrown more questions at you than answers, I guess, Now, this is almost the end of my presentation. So some key ingredients for creating deep tech. Again, this is my perspective. You are welcome. One is spirit of why not. In India, we have not cultivated the spirit. In our children, when we teach also, we want compliance. We want, people to say yes, rather than saying, no, this is wrong. How many professors can tolerate, or how many teachers in school can tolerate that the student says you're wrong? Okay, but no, that never happens. And I think this whole why not, what if, that sort of thing, which is very, very prevalent in the US. And I think we need to imbibe that if you want to innovate and create, because most of the deep tech that I talked about, they've all come from the Western world. Okay, there is very little contribution from our side. Like even the quantum computer I talked about being developed at ISC, already things have developed in US. Now we said we don't want to lag behind too much. Let us also start developing it. Then the other part is that we have to encourage outlandish ideas. I've sat through enough project review, proposal reviews in TST, in MIT, and many other some ministries. Even in the early days in MHRD, we don't like to fund proposals where the outcome is very uncertain. We want to fund proposals where the outcome is certain. Let me give a small example why US is the leader. Several years ago, DARPA director was there. Okay. And that year, I think the proposal that he had funded, I think about 60 or 70% was successful. Normally, one would have thought the board would go and tell the director, okay, great, 60, 70%, next year make it 80%. On the other hand, it became opposite. The director was taken mildly to task, saying that no, we don't want the success rate to be more than 35%, 33%. Because we want you to fund hard problems. We don't want you to fund problems that can be solved. In some sense, DARPA should fund problems that are unsolvable. And that is how internet was born. And many other things that have come from DARPA that even the world is using it, though DARPA is a defense agency. And I think that thinking does not quite prevail in India, in my opinion. Encourage unstructured thinking. The trouble is like my lecture here is very structured. Reality is not structured that way. Reality, when you develop something, all of us have done some research, and if you look back and see, our thinking was very unstructured. Eventually, we wrote a paper which is highly structured. But what led to that paper is highly unstructured. That is what we need to teach. The unstructured thinking. Structured thinking is easy. You can even pick it up. ChatGPT can do the structure for you today. But unstructured thinking, ChatGPT can't do. Withstanding failures. We have to accept sometimes that if you're going to do something cutting edge, innovative, you're going to fail more often than succeed. The famous statement by Edison. Okay. Of course, you need tenacity and a bit of luck. You have to be at the right place, right time, asking the right questions. That's something which nobody can avoid out here. So one of the ladies who started the introduction out here for today's lecture, so I'll also end with a quote from Feynman, which I kind of messy quote, but interesting quote. I have approximate answers and possible beliefs and different degrees of certainty about different things, but I'm not absolutely sure about anything. And I think the last phrase, not absolutely sure about anything, is very, very profound. Thank you so very much. Okay, I think I kept to the time limit. Like you wanted me to talk about 30 minutes, 30, 35 minutes. So I hope I have not overshot my time. Thank you so much. I'll be more than happy to answer any question that you have to the best of my abilities.
Thank you, sir. And yes, you're well within the time limit. Thank you for your intriguing talk. And I'm sure everyone here have been enlightened about what deep tech is and how AI shapes the world and how it governs the future societies and about its positive and negative impacts. So now we have a few minutes for a Q&A session.
Sure.
I now request my colleague Sanjeev to take over the Q&A session.
Thanks, Bhavna. Thank you, Dr. Desai. That was such an exciting talk. It just spans so many different technical areas, and we all enjoyed the talk. And we have lots of questions that have come in. I thank the audience for sending in so many questions. We'll try to cover as much as we can and sort of flash some of the questions. I think the first one that came in was from Rajamuthu Srinivasan. So the question is an apt topic to discuss the growing implications of AI and ML in the health industry. So in your perspective, what continued education framework do you suggest for a biological scientist to learn and incorporate these tools in his or her domain?
I think time has come where the so-called silos of biology and silos of engineering which have been existing, I think we need to bridge those silos. Okay, no, I'm not talking about breaking it. Okay, that would be too harsh. But somewhere the bridge has to be there. Sorry? You're saying something?
No, sir. Please go ahead.
No, I'm saying that we need to answer this question, we need to bridge it. That is, engineers also need to learn some amount of biology, while the biologists also need to learn some amount of engineering. And that's where they will learn a bit of AI. how it can be used, what implication you have. Today, in fact, I say AI is not a purview of computer scientists. It's a horizontal thing. It's not a vertical. It impacts all disciplines, even economics, social science, etc., etc. And in that sense, some basic knowledge is important. And I'll give, I did try a few things. For example, at IIT Hyderabad, we started a course for engineers on gene editing. We have a department of biotechnology, and one of the faculty was teaching it. It was a one credit course. So I didn't want to make it very heavy. Now maybe they have a little more. I don't recall. I don't know. I've not been in touch with how the curriculum is going at IIT Hyderabad. But it was an optional thing, and I wanted to actually make it mandatory. But then many faculty felt that let's keep it optional in the Senate. So I said, fine. So it was a 14-hour module on gene editing. And I said, you cannot graduate as an engineer not knowing what is gene editing, what is happening out there, and how things are moving out there. Because to me, the word itself, gene editing, is a very engineering phrase. So I think this is how, to answer the question, the two sides have to talk to each other, interact with each other. And that reminds me of Bell Labs. Bell Labs in the early days made some profound contributions. In fact, some of the contributions I talked about, both Shannon did his whole information theory work at Bell Labs. The transistor, Bell Labs. Okay, both the things which are impacted today's society came out of Bell Labs. And the key thing in Bell Labs was they had very heterogeneous group of people who talk to each other. A coding theory guy will talk to a chemist, and he developed code and Hamming codes. If you look it up, you can won't get it. A chemistry guy will talk to a coding guy and develop something which will help him in doing work in chemistry. I think that culture needs to be brought in. I don't have exactly an answer as to how we bring in that culture, but we need to start attempting that culture where people in engineering, mathematics bump all the time into people in biology, in biochemistry, and those areas. And I think some exciting things will come out of it.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. I think we'll get some more questions. There's a question from Tanjo Balganesh. Any thoughts on how technology can be used to increase the accessibility of these deep tech aids to our broader population?
Yeah, that's a tough question again, because I think people who have access to deep tech are the ones who are economically in better shape. So I think if you want that access, one is, of course, something which is nice happened in India is our UPI. Okay, the Unified Payment Interface. I mean, that is such a simple technology on an ordinary phone, and even someone in a village can use it. So in some sense, one can create such technologies which are easily accessible. They operate not on a computer or fancy computer, but they can operate on an ordinary, 3,000 rupee phone. Okay, I think, and of course, it also operates on a 1.5 lakh rupee phone. So I think that is one example. But my feeling is that in order to, because initially the technology is going to be expensive. You look at the iPhone, when it first came, I think it was 2007 or 8, it was about $600 or $800. I remember one of my former students in US showed me, and I said, my goodness, I'm not going to spend so much money on this phone out here. I have a laptop, it's good enough. But today, practically everybody has an iPhone. Even so-called Android phones are nothing but images of that. So I think the question, I think, to answer it is that the accessibility to a larger, broader population, particularly the underserved, is by also giving them economic strength. If we can make them economically better, so I think it's a two-way process. Perhaps technology itself helps them to become economically better. At the same time, if we can make them economically better, they will afford to have deep tech in their palms. That's how I would.
Right. Thank you, sir. I think you alluded that to in one of your slides when you mentioned about the Starlink being almost a monopoly that Musk controls.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So another question from Tanmay Chitnis. So thanks for sharing your views. So I think this is an engineer. I'm a telecommunications engineer. I have a few questions. With advancement in technology in AI, ML, 6G, computing, etc., a normal human life quality hasn't improved. So what are your views on this? And
I disagree with that. I think the quality of life, look at us, I mean, telecommunication is one component. Look at medicine. I mean, people in 80s are so active. I mean, I'll give an example. C. Rangarajan, right? All of us know, former RBI governor. He's the chancellor for ICFI in Hyderabad. So I meet him often. I mean, he's 91 or 92. And when he gives a lecture, I still feel I'm learning so much about economics from him. Okay. Now, this is something because of various technologies. It's not simply 6G and computing, telecommunication. See, telecommunication has made the world smaller. Today, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You feel you can talk to people anytime, anywhere. I mean, look at WhatsApp. It has essentially taken out this whole notion of making an international call. You know, I mean, calling is like cinch. I mean, same thing. You have Zoom, you pay a little bit of money. I can have a video conferencing with anybody, anytime, sitting anywhere in the world. So I think I would say that actually, for a certain population, I agree, it is not happening to everybody. As I said, generously speaking, maybe 20-25% of the world's population, and I'm sure people will debate and say, no, no, only 10%. I'll accept that. So a small percentage of the world's population has really improved their life because of various computing technology, various communication technologies which have been there. And I mean, UPI is a classic example. I think even a small vendor who has nothing, he just sits on the roadside and sells coconuts. Today, he's able to sell more and have a better business simply because of this thing called UPI. And that is possible because of communication, because of all the IT that has gone into it, and of course, certain regulatory frameworks were set up so that it becomes easy for us to do the transaction. Does that answer your question, Tanmay? I hope so.
I think there's a second part to the question. So, what India needs to do to make a difference in lead technology era and ensure it reaches a common man?
Again, I think it's similar to the question that Bal Ganesh had asked. So partly I've answered it, but I think I'm more worried about India being at the forefront or being a leader in innovation and developing deep tech rather than user of deep. We are great users of deep tech, and we are also very good at making it accessible. We can bring the cost down. Okay. I mean, even multinationals have done that. Samsung today sells a smartphone for something like 3,000 or 4,000 rupees. It's very difficult to, imagine at one time that one could get a smartphone for something less than about $50 or $30. So I think that is one way the accessibility does take place. The other way is what I talked about, what the economics have to change. Otherwise, so it's a complex problem. It's not only a technology problem, it is technology coupled with an economic policy, economic framework by which one can lift up the overall condition of a common man, if you wish.
Okay, so I think we have time for some more questions.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. I'm also scrolling out here so I can see them.
Yeah, something that picks
Yeah,
up.
you can pick whatever you want. So I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, so from Jagdish Mittur, can deep tech help in facial recognition of street animals like dogs and cats from a distance?
Yes, definitely. Okay. Of course it can, and people are using it. I mean, those technologies have developed, but they are not as prevalent because the need for that is rather minimal. But you can obviously, because see, each dog has a distinct feature, right? Just like each human face. It's just that we are much more comfortable in differentiating human faces. We are not comfortable. I've seen people who are into dogs, love dogs. They can distinguish every dog they have it in the farm. There are these shelter areas, and the fellow has knows each and every dog. Okay, so obviously this technology can be used for dogs, cats, lions, buffaloes, you name it. Flowers, okay, peas everywhere. Yeah. I mean, it's that question of developing it and getting the right markers. No big deal.
And this can happen in real time?
It can happen in real time. I mean, you look at us, we are all of us, I mean, many of us, at least in this particular forum today, would be using Digi Yatra, right? Right? How long does it take? Maybe 10 seconds at the airport for us for the face recognition. I'm sure many of the participants are from Bangalore. Okay. But this is there at most airports today. Even Dehradun airport had Digi Yatra. Okay. So I would not Dehradun didn't have it. Chandigarh had it, sorry. So, and it works pretty fast. I mean, we have fingerprint recognition on locks, right? Today, you just put your thumbprint and the lock will open. Don't have to carry a key around. So I think recognition technology has improved tremendously since it first started. Accuracy is very high and the speed is barely in a few seconds. So same thing can happen there if the need is there. If somebody is willing to pay, it will happen. Okay, next one.
Next one. Okay, this is something from the biology side. we face the challenges of regulatory approval for advanced therapies, example, genetic engineering. So, are such regulations or challenges in implementing software, AI, and such complex technologies?
Right now, sorry, can you repeat
Are there
that?
any? So, basically, the question is about any regulations about
Ah,
implementing AI in software
yeah,
or
yeah.
in
I get-
biological.
Yeah. Biology has been, I think, my feeling is regulatory, I mean, I keep saying, we over-regulate things in India. Okay. I mean, it's like, there's a famous joke which is there that US innovates, Europe regulates, and China replicates. Okay. So I think Europe is very highly regulated if you look at it, and we are following that particular model. I think we should look at the US model, have relatively less regulation, we'll do a lot more innovation. Now, AI, what has happened because it is new and there are enough people like me who have some say, still it is not easy. So we have been sort of, whenever a regulatory document comes, many times I do get a copy to review and give my comments. I say, cut it down, make it soft, don't keep it so harsh. So there are a group of people who want very stringent regulations. There are people like me also, a reasonable number, who want the regulations to be very, very soft, and hopefully some middle ground will be there. So far, there is no formal regulatory document in the country. So in some sense, one has a lot more freedom to do things at the moment, but some regulation is bound to come. I hope it is not very highly restrictive. Okay. And my general feeling is technology is always a double-edged sword. I don't know of any technology, which cannot be misused. Since the beginning of the wheel, let's put it that way. Okay. So steam engines can be misused. So I think we cannot live in the fear that technology will be misused. So we should have such tight regulation that everything will be perfect. The world can never be perfect. Okay. We have to accept, like I talked about uncertainty. To me, that is related to an imperfect world. We have to accept the imperfect world. We have to accept uncertainty, right? And uncertainty is a beautiful thing. I hope that partly answers your question. I don't
Yes,
think
sir.
I have a full answer. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Next one.
Try to see some more questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So from Edwin Ching, can you comment on the separation distinction between the so-called fundamental research versus applied research? The classic Pasteur's quadrant of applied science can drive innovative scientific theory for short-term results faster than long-term basic unstructured research.
I think both are required. I agree. Fundamental. That's why I had one slide out there. Those were all fundamental things, right? Quantum theory, quantum mechanics, relativity. Okay. I mean, the evolutionary theory, relative. So these are the fundamental things are necessary. We cannot completely ignore. Today, what has happened in India in particular, there is a lot of emphasis. Almost all funding that comes, bulk of it is for what we call translational research. They want research to go to TRL 7, TRL 8, TRL, maybe if generously speaking, TRL 6. So I keep telling them that have a 70-30 formula. If you have X rupees, 30% of it should go for fundamental research. Okay, it may be burning the money, doesn't matter, that's required. Quantum computers didn't come about without burning money. Okay, and 70% can go for translational, given that there is so much emphasis. So I think, if you, in fact, if you look at it, the early part of the last century, until about maybe 60s, 70s, there was a lot of fundamental work that got done. Relativity came in what, 1905, quantum mechanics, again, the early part. I talked about the transistor. That was a fundamental thing. And though it looks applied today, when it was developed, people thought it was esoteric. Today, it has become like a bread and butter thing for any electronic design. Okay, so I think information theory. What Shannon did, I mean, yeah, great job, great paper. It took a long time for people to realize, hey man, this is what is going to lead to everything. Okay, so fundamental research to me is very, very crucial. But I'm not undermining applied research. I think what has happened, the pendulum has swung towards applied research, or what the normal modern vocabulary is, translational research. I think we need to keep a balance in the pendulum, and I think both are required. Yes, everybody did not do fundamental research. Everybody is not cut out for fundamental research. For that matter, everybody is not cut. I mean, someone like Feynman or Claude Shannon could never have done translational research. They were cut out only for fundamental work, and they did that, which changed the world. I mean, quantum electrodynamics, how many of us understand that? That's the contribution of Feynman. Okay. So I will leave it at that. So both are required. It's a very important question. And I hope we debate quite a bit. Today's debate, as an engineer, when I sit through, is how can academia and industry interact? I must have gone through hundreds of such debates, panel discussions, etc., etc. but hardly any debate as what should be the balance between fundamental research or blue sky research or pure research, whatever you want to call it, to and applied research, translational research, etc. I think that debate is very much required, and all of us, people who are present in this forum, have to contribute to it to come with a balanced view.
Okay, sir. I think we have time for a couple of more questions.
We'll have
I think I'll pick one from Deepak Bala. Enjoyed your talk. I'd like to hear your thoughts briefly on a sticky but important topic on balancing between fostering innovation in deep tech and ensuring ethical implementation of these technologies. Where do you see a bigger checkpoint, the research group, funding agencies, or the government?
very long question. I'm missing the points out here.
I can flash it again.
Yeah. So this is what you let me.
Yeah, this one. Deepak Bala.
Deepak Bala. I'm trying to see where is Deepak Bala. I'm unable to.
So the question is on balancing.
Deepak Bala. I got it. I got it. Enjoyed your talk. Yeah, etc. etc. Ensuring. See, ethical implementation is a complex thing. And the trouble with human beings, is that we want 100% compliance with ethical. Never happen. You have to accept 20% unethical. I think, is that famous statement by Christ, he who has never committed a sin should cast the first stone. And there was nobody out there who could comply with that, right? I think so. This is built into the human society. And I think we are trying to force something which is not there. So yes, we have to work on it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating unethical behavior. Okay, please don't get me wrong. But we have to deal with it, and not get overly perturbed unless it is something really violent, So ethics are important, and my feeling is we start working with it, and education is a great vehicle by which we can create ethical behavior. Now, education, I don't mean we should have lectures and courses and books written in curriculum. It is people. If there are a large number of people like you and I who are going to use technology in an ethical manner, I think people will follow that. We need that. We need a large mass of people who are ethical. So, in fact, in many of my talks to youngsters, I talk about it that I'm not a big fan of having a course on ethics in undergraduate curriculum or in high school. But I say that, my behavior should be ethical. Then people will implement. Look at us. How did many of us feel we are ethical? How did I never went through a course on ethics. But I had teachers in school, okay, in college, in institutes, in IIT, in US, and I learned the ethics from them, from their behavior. As the way they talked about, they said, no, this is something we should not do. This is how it will be done. Don't do this part. And that somehow got ingrained into us. And we evolved it. I'm not saying I'm 100% ethical. No human being is 100% ethical. Okay. But this is how ethics to me goes through osmosis. Ethics is not taught by textbooks, but it is taught by osmosis from one human being to another. Sounds utopian, okay, a very difficult thing to do, but I think that is what will have impact. That is how I have become, I feel by and large I'm ethical, okay. So that is how I learned ethics. And that reflects in my research, it reflects in the work, the technologies that one will develop, the way one uses technology, etc., etc. The other part is where do you see a bigger checkpoint, the research group, funding agencies, or the government?
Yeah.
I didn't understand this question. What do you mean by checkpoint?
I think someone who would sort of have a regulation on what kind of.
The regulation is always from the government. If you ask a researcher, a typical researcher don't have any regulation. Okay. And a researcher wants funding. Funding will come from the government. So blue sky research will always be funded by the government. Industry never funds blue sky research. And there was a debate going on. I remember meeting a Nobel laureate from UC Santa Barbara. He was there at a Pan-IIT meeting in the US. And he says, even this is a myth that you think in US that industry funds blue sky research. No. He says blue sky research has always been funded in the United States also by the government. Okay. NIH could be one example. It could be even defense. Like look at internet. Who funded the internet? No industry funded it. DARPA. DARPA is a government agency. And there are many such examples, by the way. Okay. Yes, applied research many times, like the quantum computer that IBM developed. Yes, they got a lot of money. They put in money of their own. They might have got some government funding. I don't know about that. But definitely IBM itself put in a lot of money. Chat GPT that was developed. Yes, it's an applied activity in AI, not the fundamental activity in AI that Minsky and Papert and others who worked on it. Okay. That was funded definitely by a private organization, and private funding was there. So applied research, yes, but blue sky research has to come from the government. So I think all three groups have to work in tandem, in harmony. No one group can just take off on their own and say that, yes, this will happen. Does that answer your question, Deepak? I'm not sure, but
We've covered
this is a topic for a nice debate or a panel discussion, which is a bigger checkpoint. Research group, funding agencies, or government. It's a great panel discussion topic.
Okay, and then there's a question from Dr. Lavanya. Yeah. Thanks for the insightful session. AI has made inroads into healthcare and medical education. We are trying to integrate the same into medical curriculum from young medicos. I think that's a comment about how to integrate that.
I think I didn't know about it, but I'm really happy that it is being integrated into the medical curriculum. That's really nice. Thank you.
Probably time for one more question, sir, before we close.
Sure, sure.
Okay, there's a question from Aradhana.
Uh-huh.
Wonderful talk. What type of support or push do we need from the government? Grants awareness of AI for common people. AI introduced in primary education. So, what do you think, sir? Is it time to get it into school
I think they're
curriculum?
already doing no. Already, I was told. I have not followed primary education and secondary. Primary may be a little too early, but at least somewhere in the middle school. I think some of these things about technologies can be brought in out there. See, the reason I'm saying today, you look at a 11th and 12th standard kid. That kid is far more comfortable with technology. I guarantee you, all of us in this particular talk today who are listening to me, if you buy a new phone, likelihood is, I mean, if you're married and you have kids, likelihood is it's your kid who's going to configure the phone. You're not going to configure it. It is your son or daughter, who will put all the apps that are required out here, get the settings done in the right place, etc., etc., whichever phone you buy. And point is that they know a lot of use of technology. Why do we have to hide anything? In fact, I think even CRISPR should be at least talked about or alluded to it in some biology class in high school or secondary school. So I think, yes, we need to talk about AI out there, what is happening. In fact, we need to create debates out there in schools on the societal implications of AI.
Thank you, sir. I think I'll sneak in one last question. As someone who drives and rides in Bangalore, it was very heartening to see that autonomous driving system, Tihan. So, how close are we to seeing it being,
No,
coming onto the
it
roads?
will take a fair. In US, it is somewhat there. In India, and I don't know, I met somebody who had bought a Mahindra SUV. They were saying it's kind of autonomous. So on that Bombay Pune highway, he says he can go autonomous with that vehicle. I know that's what he was telling me. But in US, I have seen autonomous vehicles go on the highway. In California, I saw it in the Bay Area, and it almost at 65 miles per hour, which is almost like maybe 100 plus 110 kilometers per hour, and it was hands-free, changing lanes, braking, slowing down, etc., etc. So I think, but it will take a long time before it becomes prevalent in a very trafficy area. I don't think that we have developed technology which can respond that fast and that, and Indian traffic is very crazy. It's not automobile traffic. You have two-wheelers, three-wheelers, you have bicyclists, you have people crossing the roads, you have dogs crossing the roads, you have a tractor, God knows what, any vehicle that you can think of. So it's in this heterogeneous environment, I think it's going to take a long time before we come up with any autonomous driving systems.
Right. I think we'll have one more question. This is from a young man.
Okay.
I'll scroll down to that comment from Srijit Bhatt. He's a 15-year-old young boy,
Yeah,
and his question is, with deep tech pushing the boundaries of what's possible, how do we maintain human oversight and prevent over-reliance on technology in critical decision-making process?
No, I think this is a very important question, and I'm really happy that a 15-year-old is thinking of this question. Congratulations to you. I wish more people thought of this, and even the elders should think of it. It's a great question. What I would say is that I look upon technology as a friend. Like ChatGPT is an example. Earlier, if I wanted to know, like, suppose you are traveling through Europe and you want to know where all to travel in Europe, what would you do? You go call a friend or have a coffee with him. Hey, you went to Europe last summer. Where did you go? What did you do, etc. You just put those same questions to ChatGPT and they will give you all the answers you want. that these are the cities you should visit. This is something you should do. Is Europe safe? It will give you all the instruction. What is safe? Which cities are safe? Which cities are not safe? Bingo. So I think upon technology as a friend, as a colleague. Some I carry in my pocket, some I have it on my computer, some I kind of have it at the tip of my finger, etc., etc. And that's how I look at it in terms of the deep tech that I'm using. Of course, deep tech in medicine is very complex. Okay. That also is a friend because that deep tech cures me. I mean, robotic surgery today has moved so far ahead and the success rate is very high. The reason I'm saying in Hyderabad, Dr. Nageshwar Reddy, who has this hospital AIG, I knew him, and he was the first one in India to get the Da Vinci robot to do surgery. And today, of course, he has a lot more. I have not visited a hospital in recent times. Okay. So I would say that, yes, they are our friends in all respect, except like a knife, right? Knife is a great friend. You can cut vegetables, etc., etc. All the food you eat at one time, they had faced the knife, right? But the knife can be used to kill people also. So it's a very complex thing. Yeah. I don't know
Thank
if
you.
I hope Sridhar, do remain motivated and keep asking these questions again and again until you are happy with the answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the inspiring message. I think we'll have to close the session now. I thank all the people who logged in for the questions. And thank you, sir, for the exciting talk and taking us through all the questions and patiently answering the
No,
questions.
no, it's my pleasure. I'm a professor. I love to answer questions. Though I don't answer all of them properly, but I love to answer them. Yeah.
Right. So I'll
Okay,
now hand over the session to my colleague, Bhavna.
sure. Shall I unshare it now? Stop sharing?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you, sir. That was an interesting Q&A session. Although there were like many unanswered questions, we're sorry, but it was very interesting. And we have now come to the end of this wonderful session. I now request my colleague Ayushi to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Bhavna. Hello, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Desai for accepting our invitation and for the great talk, enlightening us about this fascinating technology that would bring in a paradigm shift in solving world's challenges. This should serve as an impetus to further advance this emerging area of research. The talk was indeed a joyride for all of us. I take this opportunity to thank Gangajan Friends Charitable Trust for the support in organizing the event. The seamless online experience has been due to Zoom virtual platform. Thank you. I thank my colleagues at Gangajan who have supported in making this event a grand success. Thank you, participants, for posting interesting questions. We had a great Q&A session. Finally, a big thank you to all for making the time to attend the event. We will sign off now. Have a great weekend. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. So thank you, everyone. And thanks for coming for my talk. Okay. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Thank you, sir.